Welcome everyone to our Sentinel Stories with Christina Westfall. She is our RSA Scholar for this year, and so we're very happy to have her here with us today. And so I'm going to kick it off with our first question. Christina, just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you found your way to SANS, how you got into cyber, just a little bit of background.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. So how I got into cyber, I had worked in a K to 12 school district for a number of years. So very familiar with technology. And I kind of got interested in ethical hacking just as a side hobby. Didn't really ever think it was going to turn into a career for me. It was just something I had seen on TV and it looked cool. And I downloaded a Kali Linux virtual machine, realized I had no idea what I was looking at, wanted to learn more about it. So I just started just because I wanted to understand, just ethical hacking a little bit better. Really just kind of grew to learn to love it. And kind of in parallel to that, the headlines started really ramping up with ransomware attacks, specifically ones that were targeting schools. And being in a K-12 school district, like that's very near and dear to my heart, and also hospitals. And my mother is a retired NICU nurse. I'm very fortunate that my job does not involve a lot of life or death. But people who work in healthcare, they don't have that luxury. They deal with a lot on the job. And so just the idea that anybody would target, just hospitals, people are at their most vulnerable and the people taking care of them, like they have much more important things to worry about than being affected by a cyber attack. So, the more of those headlines that I read, I really kind of started getting fired up about it. And then that kind of coincided with COVID, where I think a lot of us really took a look at just a lot of things in life, and in career. And that was when I started reflecting that, maybe it's time for me to try something new. So I started studying up for some, the CompTIA triad, it's just basic certifications. Started applying to jobs and got really lucky, landed an entry level SOC analyst role. And the rest is history. I just moved up through MSSPs from there. And now I'm at Anvilogic, which is it's a detection engineering platform. I'm a senior threat detection engineer there. I've been there about 3 years, absolutely loving it. And then as far as finding my way to SANS, I wasn't working in the industry very long before I started hearing about just different categories of certifications because, as many of you know, there are so many out there, right? And just over and over, I kept hearing that GAC was just the gold standard. I mean, if you really knew your stuff, or, if you have a GAC certification, like that's evidence that you really know what you're talking about. And I heard very good things about the SANS training and the quality of education. And because I entered in from, my undergrad is in business, it has nothing to do with technology. I really did feel the need to pursue some more education just to fill in some gaps in my knowledge. So I knew I wanted to get a master's degree. I knew I wanted to be in cybersecurity. And when I realized that SANS provided an option, I just thought to myself, well, this sounds like a really good fit. And the more I looked into it, flexibility is something that is really important to me. Working full time, it's not easy to fit in a brick and mortar schedule. And so just for a lot of reasons, SANS just really seemed like a good fit. So here I am.
I love it. And remind me, you are in the master's program and how long have you were admitted? End of 22, 23? When did you start?
Yeah, so I started my first term was January 2023. Yeah, so I have probably a little bit under a year left to go. If all goes as planned. So
Awesome. Well, so, being in the master's program, you got an email, I guess it would have been in the fall of last year about becoming an RSA scholar. And so, what made you decide to apply to become the RSA Security Scholar for our school?
yeah, so when the email came in, I just asking me if I was interested in applying. I read through it, and of course I've heard of the RSA conference before. I was familiar with what it was, and so to have the opportunity to go to the conference, and in any capacity is exciting because it's a really huge event, and so the possibility of even representing SANS, just like that was really just kind of humbling, like a huge honor just to even be considered. So I just realized, hey, this sounds like a really good opportunity. I've really enjoyed the education that I've received at SANS, and so having an opportunity to potentially represent, like that really meant a lot to me. So Yeah, so I, wrote a quick essay and, and sent it off.
Awesome. And then so you obviously then were selected out of everyone that applied, and being the RSA Security Scholar means that you get to go to the conference. And so kind of walk me through what the conference is like, because as part of the Security Scholar program means obviously you attend the conference, but there were some extra things that you got to do ahead of time, correct? As being a security scholar. So kind of walk me through what all of this looked like.
Yeah, so for anyone who's not familiar with the RSA conference, it is massive. I think they said they had 45,000 people there this year, which is just, an amazing, amazing number of people just descending upon San Francisco. It really just takes over the whole city. So it's very big, it's very overwhelming. And so having the security scholar program, what was great about that is that it gave me a little bit of structure, and it introduced me to people kind of right off the bat, all the rest of the people in the security scholar program, which I think there were like probably about 50, 60, somewhere around there. And so it was a really good mix of having some smaller events that were scheduled, that gave me an opportunity to get to know some people really well, and people who were, somewhat in my shoes, somewhat not. Being like a SANS master student, I have to be working in the industry. That's, part of the program. And a lot of them, in undergrad and graduates, still hadn't entered the industry yet. So it was kind of like one foot in both ponds, in some ways. But it was a really valuable, I think, just kind of experience in the sense that we got access to some closed door situations, access to some industry professionals that if I was just a regular conference goer, I wouldn't have had any of the opportunities to meet some of the people that I met. So that was really interesting. Just meeting some of these like really heavy hitters in the industry. And then also just getting to meet the other security scholars and just hear about their research, what they're working on, the areas in the field that they're passionate about. That was really exciting for me as well.
Awesome. So what do you think was the coolest thing that you got to do, experience, see at the conference overall?
Yeah, it's hard to choose just one. I will say that I attended so many talks that were just, on all kinds of topics. What's kind of funny, so some of the other security scholars, they would mention like, oh, my professor or, that I worked with, they're here. I'm going to try and, find their talk and everything. And so for me, there were a handful of SANS instructors from some of the courses that I'd taken who were speaking. So getting to go to some of their sessions and actually meet them in person for the first time was just really, just kind of special, and a little bit different than everybody else. Because I've done the entire program on demand. So having the opportunity to meet some of my instructors in person, that was really exciting. And then I would say, as far as like the program, like some of the closed door things that they offered, they have this one security experts dinner where they invite some people from the industry, and I mean these are some really big names that they invite to this event. And they have them sit, you have a dinner and you get a couple of experts sitting at your table. And so that was wonderful. Just the conversations that I was able to have that night were really exciting. So one of the experts that was sat at my table was Adam Shostack, and he invented the CVE, but does not hold a CVE himself, which is just kind of a funny story. He submitted one and it wasn't approved because it was deemed like too obscure, but he literally invented, the whole concept of what a CVE is. So I just, he was just fascinating to talk to, and just his perspective was really neat to hear. So, and then as far as like other cool things I did, I had the chance to run the Golden Gate Bridge, which has nothing to do with, security or RSA, but it's something it's like a bucket list item. All the times I've been to San Francisco, I've never run across the bridge. And so I managed to do that while I was out there too. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's quite an accomplishment. So obviously, got to do really fun things, meet some cool people, but what do you think was your biggest takeaway from attending the conference, or maybe the most surprising or um, unexpected thing that you learned that has maybe influenced your outlook on just the field, that you're taking with you back to your job? Something about like something that you might have learned that you were like, oh wow, yeah, I'm really glad I attended this and I'm taking this back with me.
Yeah. So probably to the surprise of nobody on this call by this point, the big topic, just you could not go 5 feet without hearing someone talk about AI and agentic AI and securing AI, and even less so about depending on AI to solve to replace our jobs, but more just how we can use it effectively, how we can secure it, how we can have good policies surround it, really across all areas of security. AI was a very, very big topic. So, like it or not, like AI is definitely, very much in the zeitgeist right now. And so I would say what was really surprising and honestly a little bit scary. So there was this one experience there called the DARPA AI Cyber Challenge, I think. It was this really cool interactive just kind of display, almost like being at like a museum exhibit, sort of. Really, really interesting. Um, and just fascinating people, just experts talking about this cyber competition that was going on. But what the competition is all about is developing autonomous AI that can analyze for security vulnerabilities and then fix them on the fly. And it was amazing to see. So this is fully autonomous AI. This isn't something with a human in the loop. This is, all the training is done ahead of time. And so these autonomous AI systems are finding and fixing vulnerabilities. So that's really exciting. Like that's really cool. But the scary part of it, the autonomous part is that all right, if we've got the technology to use this power for good, obviously somebody's got the power to do this, to find these vulnerabilities and exploit them versus fixing them. So that was something that really, I think, got my attention, and was just a very surprising thing. I would say the other surprising thing, the expo floor there is massive, and one of the booths there had live goats, and I was not expecting to see live goats, while I was out in San Francisco. So that was another surprising thing.
What were the purpose of the live goats? Just for
I
fun?
I couldn't tell you. Just I think to get attention, which worked, but I can't remember what company it was, so I don't know how effective marketing it actually was. But it drew people in, that's for sure. A lot of people taking pictures there. So
That's funny. And also, I do have to share, I feel like we should talk about, you got to answer a question from Magic Johnson or ask him a question.
yeah, so Magic Johnson was he was one of the keynote speakers for one day while I was there. And I happened to be sitting with a couple of my friends really close to the front, and I was sitting on the aisle seat. So at one point, he's walking around, he's a very engaging speaker. I was, I don't know what I expected, but he was one of the most engaging speakers of the entire conference. So he's walking around the audience, and he had picked a couple of people out of the audience. One guy was wearing a Giants hat, so he had to kind of give him some trouble for that. And somebody was wearing a Lakers jersey, so of course he got called up and everything. But I'm just sitting there, I'm just there, to watch the speech and everything. And he picks me up out of the audience, and he tells me to ask him a question. So I'm just glad that I've been paying attention. Like at that moment, I had something I asked him. I asked him about he had talked about AI and how it was affecting, just changing things very quickly, even in the world of sports. So I was able to ask him, okay, well, what surprised you the most, or what has surprised you the most about how AI is impacting, the sports industry? And he talked a little bit about that. But I will say I'm really glad that the first two people that he called up were gentlemen, and he told them to when they were done with their question, to give him a chest bump, and he didn't ask me to do that. So I'm really glad he just told me to take a selfie instead. I feel like it would have been a lot weirder. My vertical jump's not that good, so.
Hey, but you have a selfie with Magic Johnson. That's pretty awesome.
It's a pretty good story, if nothing else. I have that. So
That's amazing. So, do you have any suggestions, if for anyone who's on the call who maybe is like, wow, this sounds like a great opportunity to be able to apply for Security Scholar, because obviously we will be releasing our applications when the RSA team sends this to us in the coming months. And so, do you have any suggestions for those on the call on maybe what they should do if they want to apply, or things to look at or consider if they're interested in becoming the next RSA Scholar?
yeah, what I would say is, and this applies not just to this opportunity, but really throughout your career experience, is to really get in touch with your motivation and really have a good understanding of why you love doing this work. Um, for me, like, I touched on it in the beginning, but like a big motivation for me is helping people, and so hearing about cyber attacks targeting healthcare and education. To me, it's a very personal thing, and so it's easy for me to speak about, why I have such drive, why I'm motivated, why I really love this work. In addition to just loving the technology and it being an interest of mine. But the more that you're able to connect that to your motivation and to speak on that, I just find that that's a really effective way of getting other people interested. And so the more that you can speak to that when you're applying for the RSA program or at different points in your career, if you're experiencing burnout, getting in touch with why this is important to you, why this work matters to you. If you're ever at a crossroads, maybe you've got a couple of paths in front of you, with job applications and and job offers. Being able to return to why this work is important to you will steer you in the right direction. And it gives you some really good talking points. And I think just is a powerful way to communicate why you care about this industry in general. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So we do want to leave plenty of time for questions, but before we go to your questions, we do want to share a little recap that the RSAC team sent us, just so that you guys can have an idea of kind of what it's like to be an RSA scholar at the conference. And so this is what they sent us. And so I'll let Christina kind of share what each slide is all about.
Mhm. So this was the first night. This was a big team building night. So lots of icebreakers. And I will admit that at the end of a long travel day, I'm on the East Coast, so this was at the end of a very long day for me. I was so tired, and this was a very high energy event, and so I made it through. But it was a really good way to meet several different people, because they did split us into teams when we came into the room. And so one of the people that I sat next to that night, like we ended up just becoming, really fast friends and hung out a lot during the rest of the conference, and have kept in touch since then. So this, yeah, was the first night of team building. We did not win. You'll notice I'm not in the first place picture on top there, but it was fun. We got to put together backpacks for a local charity for kids going to some kind of a STEM enrichment camp for the summer.
Awesome.
And then so this was at a closed door event the next day. So retired General Paul Nakasone was there. And he was there mostly just for a Q&A. He spoke a little bit at the beginning, but really he was very big on, this time is for you, ask me any questions you want. And so especially for the students that are looking to go into government work or have military backgrounds, like that was a really powerful event. And he's a wonderful speaker, very good sense of humor, but just very, very approachable at the same time. This is somebody who has a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, but really just when he was sitting up there, just seemed like just any other person you could just strike up a conversation with. So that was really neat. And so this is, I was talking before about the dinner we had with the security experts. And so these are photos from that evening. So in the upper right-hand corner, the gentleman there with the white hair. So that is Whitfield Diffie. So if you are familiar with public key infrastructure and the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, it's that Diffie, he has that algorithm named after him. So that gives you the kind of an idea of some of the people that we were able to meet that evening. And so that was just one of many industry experts that we were able to meet. So just wonderful night, fascinating conversations. And then so these pictures are from the when any students who had research that they wanted to present, they could submit a poster for it. And then present at this was just outside one of the expo halls. So these are some of the security scholars who chose to present their research. And this was a really fun event to go to as well. Very informal. There was probably, I want to say probably about a dozen, maybe 20 people who had posters. And so just getting to talk to them, and at this point in the week, I'd gotten to know a lot of them pretty well. So getting to hear some of their research, and I just think it's always fun when you're talking to somebody about something they're really passionate about. Those are very fun conversations to have, and so this was a highlight as well. So if you ever get to go to the RSA conference, you don't have to be a security scholar to go to this. I would definitely recommend checking out the poster sessions because you'll get to hear about just some really interesting research for things you maybe didn't even know existed. So had a lot of fun there. And then, so this was the final day. So this was college day. And so they had a panel discussion and they had, let's see, I want to say McDonald's, Walmart, and Google. They had staff from each of those companies. So very big enterprise, very interesting perspectives. And so they had a Q&A session where, again, anybody could get up to the microphone and ask them questions. So really interesting to hear their perspective, not just on where the industry is today, but also how they came up through the industry, because all of them had kind of unconventional paths, because when they were getting started with their careers, there was no such thing as a cybersecurity degree. And so it's really fun to hear some of those stories and how they found their way into the industry. And then, yeah, the resume review and networking session. Full disclosure, I was not there for that event. I had to go back to the hotel to pack and check out for my flight. But that was an opportunity as well. And so, especially for undergrad, for those who are graduating soon, about to enter the industry, they did have the opportunity to have their resumes reviewed by hiring experts and just network with some industry professionals to just kind of get used to having some conversations and get some feedback on entering the industry there. So
Awesome. So yeah, so great. Sounds like overall it was an excellent opportunity for you. And
yeah, it was wonderful. And it just I know at some point, like at any point when I look back on my career and like just different experiences that I had and everything, I know this is going to just stand out as a really enjoyable event for me, just a real high point. Just wonderful meeting other people and getting to experience it. So very grateful that I had the opportunity to go.
awesome. Well, we are very glad that you were able to go. And now we're going to open it up to questions to you all that you have for Christina. There's two in the chat, so I'll start reading those off. And then if you guys have more, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask yourself. So the first one is, beyond SANS and GIAC, what were the personal projects that made the difference to employers, I guess, when you were job searching and looking to get into the field?
So I would say for my very first job that I got in the field, so this was like entry level cybersecurity. They didn't have any requirements as far as prior cyber experience or anything. I think what really stood out to them was just that I had spent enough time working in IT for education and really understood kind of a customer service focus, even though it's a school district. It's not so much it's not like working in retail, although I had experience with that as well. But just I think that I was able to speak to kind of the servant role of working in IT, and having an understanding too of just the basics as far as networking fundamentals and basic tech support fundamentals, and being able to tie that into security, while also demonstrating just how much I enjoyed just working in my home lab. So I don't know that I had a formal project that I showed them, but I was able to speak about some of the things that I had done in my home lab or different trainings that I had, and then having a couple of CompTIA certifications, just to show that I had enough passion on my own to go pursue those. All of those were talking points that helped me, I think, probably land that first role. So.
Okay. Then another question is, during your transition from security analyst to detection engineer, what key areas did you focus on and what training or learning resources, apart from SANS, did you pursue to grow in this field?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that one. So yeah, so it's just about 3 years ago at this point, like almost to the day, I think, from when I got the job offer and everything. And so the job that I had at the time that I was applying for this role at Anvilogic, my title there was threat detection analyst. And so even though it had not a lot to do directly with detection engineering, as far as kind of what I do now with a lot of like writing logic and that kind of thing. Threat hunting was a big part of that role, and just understanding how to write queries and to read something from threat intelligence and being able to distill that down into, okay, what am I looking for? If I was to write a detection rule for this, what fields are important? What are some different ways that I can search for this? So that was something that I focused on. There was this one resource. It's since been like it's no longer officially supported, but I think the project is still out there. I think you can still download it. You may just need to do a bit more troubleshooting to get it stood up, but it's called Detection Lab. And so it's a project where you can download and install just your own. I mean, it's like Splunk is part of it. the Atomic Red Team is a part of it, just all kinds of different tools and resources that you can install in your own home lab. You do need a lot of storage space, so I will warn you, it's a long download, it's a long install process. But that was something that I used quite a bit to build out my home lab and have a lot of tools available to me to just understand kind of what I was looking at and have different things to play around with in my home lab. Um, and I would say, so this book wasn't out when I started my role. It came out, I think, a year or so into my role, but there's a book called Practical Threat Detection Engineering. I want to say, is it by Pact Press? I'm trying to remember. But the title is Practical Threat Detection Engineering. Excellent book. We'll walk you through how to set up your own Elastic-based home lab for detection engineering. Another really, really fantastic resource that I would recommend.
Awesome. I'm going to answer your question separately in the chat. So, Kevin is asking, what are your key takeaways from RSA with how the industry is addressing identity security? Do you see a general trend for addressing human and non-human identities?
Yeah, so I will say I don't know that I saw a lot of identity security specifically. Like when I tell you that AI was like the focus du jour, like I'm hard pressed to think of a single talk that I attended that if it wasn't completely focused on some aspect of AI, it definitely mentioned AI somewhere. In fact, one of the sessions I attended, I think they made a joke about like this slide has AI on it because this is the only way we got our talk would get our talk accepted is if we mentioned AI. So that was a really that was really the main topic. In terms of identity security, identity is the new perimeter. And that's something certainly that is not going to go away anytime soon. But I don't know that I saw anything as far as trends for addressing human and non-human identities. Yeah, and I'm not saying there weren't any talks that went into that, but as far as what I was focused on going to, um, I don't remember that being a big topic of discussion. So,
All right, we've got another question. What sources do you use to keep up with cyber news?
so I am very fortunate to work with a team that has some really good threat researchers at Anvilogic. So I cheat. My coworker Kevin Lowe, he has the best updates all the time. So any kind of trending threat, sometimes he's publishing them officially, like in his role at Anvilogic. For the really big exciting ones, and so I think you can probably sign up to get those delivered to your email. But then even stuff that maybe isn't worth like a full write-up or isn't like directly relevant to something that Anvilogic will put out, I still at the end of the week I get a whole rundown from Kevin about every single thing practically that has surfaced during the week. So whether it's AI security related, whether it's information on security breaches that are big topics, vulnerabilities, any security news that's worth knowing. I'm very fortunate that I have a coworker who is on top of all of it. So
Okay, so we had a question about requirements for applying to the RSA Scholar, and then what does the RSA Scholarship entail? So I'm going to let you answer the question about what the RSA Scholarship entails, and then I'll ask the first part.
yeah, so the scholarship entails flight and hotel and and a stipend for transportation from the airport to the hotel. All of that was covered, plus the conference pass, obviously. What I didn't realize until a little bit later in the process is that um, for a second and third year, conference passes are also covered. I would have to cover airfare and hotel for myself to get there. But if I want to go to RSA conference for the next 2 years, I have passes. So that was really exciting to find out. So
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. So for in terms of the requirements for applying, and so as Christina had mentioned, there's an application that you fill out in there for us that we manage that piece. But RSA essentially sends every school that is linked up with them to participate in the scholarship program kind of a prompt. And so there will be a prompt that you will answer. You'll write up an essay. And then we, as a school, we will read your essay. We put together a committee from various departments around the school. So someone from admissions, we've got people from the career team, the advising team. So we've got a committee of people that they review all of these essays. And then we just kind of look at a whole bunch of things and we just kind of determine, all right, this is the person that seems the most passionate, seems that they're going to get the most out of this experience. And so like what Christina mentioned, really have to show, why are you motivated? Why is this going to help you? And what will this how what are you going to get out of this conference and this experience? And so again, the prompt is pretty detailed. How long would you say your essay was, Christina? When you do you remember?
Yeah, it's funny because I looked it up, just a few minutes before we started this call. Just pulled it up and everything and read through it. And I remembered it being longer. I think I'm conflating it with the admissions essay I wrote to, for the master's program. It was not very long. I think like single spaced would have been less than a page. So I think, probably like 5 to 8 paragraphs, I would guess. Long enough to cover the basics, but not like I think I knocked it out in an afternoon. So.
Yeah. So you'll get an email from the school. So when we get the information from the RSA team, we then send out communications to students about applying, and then you'll get all that information with the deadlines and all of that. And so that's how the process works. And so, but yeah, it's a great opportunity. Everything's covered. And then I did not know that you also got passes for the next two conferences as well. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to going back for sure.
Yeah. So there's not any other questions in the chat. So I actually have another question for you. Um, so have you been to other conferences besides RSAC that you feel like would, because obviously we've talked about how seems like it's been a great opportunity. Are there other ones out there that you maybe have been to that you also think would be good opportunities for your peers to attend if they are able? Because I think it's, especially within the field that you guys are in, it's always great to go to conferences and get out there and meet people and just learn outside the classroom.
Yeah, so RSA was my first in-person conference. So there haven't been any others that I've attended in person at this point. However, I really do want to get to a B-sides, like one of the local B-sides. For me, probably the closest one is Philadelphia. But there's B-sides conferences all over the country at different times of year. So I would absolutely encourage you to find your local B-sides, or make it a destination. Go to anyone that looks interesting. Just the things that I have heard, just as far as the quality of the presentations, and the networking that you can do there, the interesting people you meet. I've heard such good things about B-sides, and I do think that is, it's far smaller than 45,000 people, so might be a little bit more my speed, a little bit less overwhelming, like in that sense. So I do plan on attending some of those at some point. But no, the last conference that I had been to before that was called Pete and C, and it's like a Pennsylvania educator and technology conference. So nothing to do with cybersecurity. Well, probably has something to do with cybersecurity now, but not really directly relevant. So
Nicole says she's also in Philly. Boardwalk Bites in July.
I'll have to check it out. Maybe I'll see you there.
There you go. All right. While we're waiting for more questions to come in, I have some more. So you had mentioned earlier that, obviously you're working full time and you were looking
Mhm.
for a program that wasn't the brick and mortar experience, because obviously it is hard to go to a physical campus and take your classes. And so how do you juggle? Because I'm sure everyone loves to hear how everyone does this. The master's program is hard. It's long. It's intense. So how do you juggle, working full time, having a life, but then also taking your courses and then now adding this on top of it, going to a conference and then I'm sure you're playing in CTFs and doing all those things. Like how do you juggle this life and getting through this? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, it's so time management is crucial. Like, cannot emphasize that enough. Um, so a big thing for me is like when I start a course is mapping out ahead of time, just based on kind of the content, taking just a cursory look at the books and the on-demand videos and working out a schedule for myself that, I don't have to stay super rigid towards, but I want to at least make sure that the first, 5 to 6 weeks of a course that I'm really planning out just kind of roughly where I want to be hitting each book, each major section of the course. And if I'm a few days off here or there, like it's not a big deal. But basically, that gives me enough time to make sure that I'm hitting or at least getting close to those milestones. And then I make sure to do all of my indexing. It's the last thing, it's the last part of my study prep that I really do before I take my practice exams. So really just setting in my calendar, just putting in dates for, this is the date I need to take my first practice exam. These are the dates I need to be indexing. These are the dates that I need to have finished the on-demand videos, at least my first pass. So yeah, time management and being very intentional about that is a big part of it. I'll say too is building in a little bit of extra flex time from when I schedule my exam. I try to do it a couple of weeks before the end of the term. And so that way, if I really feel like I need a little bit of extra time, like I have a little bit of cushion that I can push it off a little bit further. Um, and I would say, so I'm, in a 1 month break right now in between classes, especially with the electives when you get towards the really intense ones. So after 4508 and after 4610, I took a month off after each of those courses. Um, you can take care of yourself and give your brain a little bit of time to relax. And so I would definitely, as tempting as it is to just kind of plow through the whole program and get it done as fast as I can. I know for myself and to really truly absorb the information and just to keep myself sane. Building in breaks is important. So I would definitely encourage that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Breaks are always a good thing. Give yourself time to recuperate.
Yes. Especially after Graham.
All right, Kevin wants to know what would be your advice in taking the lessons learned from your SANS courses to the workplace?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's wonderful about SANS, I know it's like it's, kind of the SANS promise is that whatever you learn in class, like you can take to your job and apply it that day, like they try to build that into every single course. And it's true. I mean, so many things that I have learned, just from a course, especially in 4508 with GCFA, and threat hunting, and those kinds of things that is just very much in line with understanding the way that different attacks work, and techniques. Um, to be able to tie that into detection logic and to read threat intel reports and kind of pull out those pieces that that are really salient and write good detections around them. Every single course I have taken has had something, even the courses that are about leadership, a lot of them still have something that I can apply on the job, the day of. So my advice for taking those lessons and applying them is, I guess, when I'm going through the content, a lot of times I'm just kind of thinking like there's two things I'm always thinking of. Number one, would that make a good test question? Because that helps me later on when I'm indexing. And number two, like, all right, like, is there anything that I've seen recently, that this would apply to, that this, that this is relevant to, and kind of just trying to map that out as I'm observing the content, as I'm studying. So
Yeah, definitely. We've got another question of, is there any parts or are there any parts of cybersecurity that you would like to explore that you just have not done yet?
yeah, it's funny because so I had to select my final elective for the master's program not that long ago, and I just had such a hard time choosing one because there are so many courses that I wanted to take. So my next course is going to be 4509, which is the cloud forensic response course. But it was really hard to choose between that one and there's it's one of the newer courses. About machine learning, specifically for cybersecurity, basically data science, applied data science for cybersecurity. That is the course I absolutely plan on using my, my alumni benefits for at some point to take that course down the road because that looks fascinating. So I would say kind of the more data science side of things is really interesting to me. That team that I work with at Anvilogic, I work very closely with the data science team, and they're a fun group of people. I don't understand half of what they're talking about sometimes, but boy, would I love to. So, and then also just the way that I got into the field was really more on kind of the red team side of things, and I get to use some of those skills a little bit. It's like the role I have is very much it's detection engineering, but it's also kind of purple teaming in a way. It's a lot of testing out these exploits in our lab in order to validate our detections. And so, I will always love the red team side of things. That's kind of how I got into this field to begin with, was an interest in that. So just offensive security in general, I think is always going to be interesting to me.
And I also do want to make a little plug that when you guys graduate, you all will have the opportunity to get one course a year at a discount. We call it the alumni single course discount. And so if there are ever courses that you're like, man, I really wish I could have taken that when I was a student, but it wasn't maybe part of my program or I didn't have enough electives, you will have that opportunity to take one course a year at a significant discount. And so keep that in mind that if there is a course that you're like, oh, I wish I could take that, but it doesn't fit into my program schedule, you have that option further down the line. So just a reminder for whenever you get to that point. But we have another question here. Aside from personal projects and a home lab, as well as the hard work it takes to get multiple high-level certifications, are there any other ways that you try to differentiate yourself from other InfoSec professionals, maybe like a blog or something?
I would say at this point in my career, no. Like it's a lot of it is focusing and doing the best job that I can. In my day to day at Anvilogic, and obviously, the master's program takes up a lot of my spare time. So in terms of bandwidth right now, I don't have a whole lot extra to do something like a blog. But I do think that's a really good way to really any kind of content you want to put out there, whether it's a blog, if you're someone who likes making video tutorials, or just doing something in your home lab and putting together a video, on YouTube and explaining that. I think that's a great way to differentiate yourself. If there's any way that you can tie it into something that you enjoy doing, then I think that's always, just kind of a good, easy, natural way to showcase that. Anything that you can bring into, if you can link to it on your resume or your LinkedIn page, then whatever form it takes, I think that's something that can help. So
Yeah, good advice. So you had mentioned that during the RSAC conference, you got to see some of your professors in person.
yes.
Who did you get to see, and how was that?
Yeah, so that was a real highlight for me because again, doing the entire program on demand, I've heard these voices, and seen them on on my computer screen, for hours and hours. So getting to see them in person was just really neat. So I was able to speak with Josh Bright. So he's the instructor for SEC 504. And so I was able to tell him that, that just how much I enjoyed his course, how much I got out of it, and how I really think that it's, it is just such a well-designed course. You can just really tell, with that course that it's not just somebody who loves the material talking about it. It's somebody who really wants every student to really get the most out of the course. And so, was able to have a nice conversation with him about that. I attended a talk by Ismail Valenzuela. He is one of the instructors for SEC 530. I didn't get a chance to speak with him. I had to get to, I think, one of my required events, like right after that talk wrapped up. But it was really neat to see him in person. And he's a very funny speaker too. And and then so at the time that I was at the conference, I was in the middle of 4610. And so the instructor for that course is Lenny Zeltzer. He wasn't speaking, but I did run into him in the hallway at one point in between talks. And so I was able to just pull him aside and be like, "Hey, sorry, are you Lenny Zeltzer? I'm taking your course right now. Like it's really wonderful." And so I had a nice conversation with him as well. So yeah, that was really neat.
Awesome. It's always fun. And I know that they also love to see all of you in person. So I'm sure that they enjoyed that. Do we have any other questions for Christina? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like, or throw it into the chat. No? Well, are there any last words that you would like to share, Christina? Those are the questions I had for you, but anything you would like to share, kind of closing out with the group about your experience, about the conference, about an RSA Scholar program, anything like that?
Yeah, so I just want to express my gratitude. Like it was an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to go and to represent SANS. And I would encourage everybody, if it sounds like something that you would like to do, absolutely apply for it. If you have ever an opportunity to go to the RSA conference, would highly recommend it. Although I would definitely recommend wearing really comfortable shoes because you'll be walking a lot. Um, But yeah, just wonderful conference. If you're able to go, you will run into so many people with just really interesting backgrounds. And so I would encourage anybody to go. And if you have any other follow-up questions that, maybe didn't come tonight, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. So don't hesitate to get in touch with me. And if any of you here end up becoming the next RSA scholar, please get in touch with me. Would love to run into you next time I'm at the conference as well. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to share your experience. And thank you everyone else for coming. Hope you guys have a great evening.
thanks, everyone.